The challenge of words. The gym was stuffy, the air thick with the smell of sweat and old glove leather. Muhammad Ali, then at the height of his fame, moved like a panther around the makeshift ring, his eyes shining with the confidence of a champion who had toppled giants. On the other side, Bruce Lee, smaller in stature, but with a presence that seemed to suck all the energy from the environment, observed him calmly. There were no gloves, no pads, just two men, a ring, and a tension that cut deeper than any punch. Ali laughed, shaking his head as he circled. "You're fast, Chinese, but this isn't a movie. You're just a philosopher, a guy who speaks beautifully. Where's the fighter?" Those present held their breath. Ali was a master at provoking, at destabilizing with words as sharp as blades. But Bruce Lee didn't blink. His eyes, dark and penetrating, fixed on the champion with an intensity that made even those closest to him instinctively recoil. Then, he smiled. Not a smile of mockery, nor of anger, it was the smile of someone who already knew the end of the story before it even began. "Philosopher," he repeated, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "You think philosophy is just talking? I don't fight with the body, Ali. I fight with the mind. And the mind." He paused, letting the words hang in the air like a promise. "The mind is the most powerful weapon there is." There it stopped. For an instant, the arrogant smile faltered. There was something in Bruce's tone, something that went beyond teasing. It was a certainty, a truth so clear it hurt. "You can call me whatever you want," continued Bruce, still motionless. "But when I touch you, you will feel it. Not because I'm stronger, nor because I'm faster. But because I've seen what you still don't understand. Combat isn't about muscles. It's about who dominates the space between thought and action." The silence stretched. Ali looked at his hands, as if hoping to find the answer he didn't have in them. When he looked up again, something had changed. It wasn't fear, it wasn't submission, it was recognition. The champion who had never been defeated by words had just met his equal in a man who didn't even need to raise his fists to beat him. "Let's see, then," Ali murmured, but there was no longer the same conviction in his voice. Bruce just tilted his head, as if to say, "We've seen it." And in that moment, without a single blow exchanged, Muhammad Ali knew he had just lost a battle that had never been physical. Because some victories don't leave marks on the body, they leave scars on the soul. The weight of recognition. The days that followed were strange for Ali. He returned to the gym, wrapped the bands around his hands, bounced on tiptoe in front of the punching bag, but something was different. The punches didn't have the same fury. The movements, once precise as a dance, now seemed filled with a new hesitation. His coaches noticed. "Your sparring partners too." No one dared to ask what had happened, but everyone felt. The champion was no longer the same. One night, after a particularly lackluster training session, Ali found himself sitting alone in the locker room, elbows resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. The door creaked, and he looked up, expecting to see one of his men. But it was Bruce. "You shouldn't be here," Ali said, "no hostility, just a fact." Bruce walked in and leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "And you shouldn't be wasting time trying to prove something you already know." Ali laughed, a short, joyless sound. "I don't know shit." "You know, yes." Bruce approached, stopping a few steps away. "You know you're not just a fighter. You never were. That's why people follow you. It's not for your hooks, it's for what you say when you open your mouth. But now you're scared that words won't be enough." Ali clenched his fists but did not stand up. "And what do you suggest? That I give up fighting? That I become a bar philosopher like you?" "I didn't suggest anything. You're the one standing there, looking at your hands as if they've betrayed you." Bruce crouched down, getting at Ali's eye level. "But if you want some advice, here it is, stop fighting yourself. The ring isn't the only place to win. Sometimes, the biggest struggle is admitting that you don't need to prove anything to anyone." Ali was silent for a long moment. Then something broke inside him. It wasn't anger or hurt pride, it was relief. Fuck, he muttered, running his hand over his face. I'm the greatest, but I can't even beat my own head. Bruce smiled, a rare, almost imperceptible smile. Now you understand. The Last Dance. 3 months later, Ollie took to the ring in Manila, facing Joe Frazier, in a fight that the whole world was waiting for. He was no longer the same Ollie as before. There were no exaggerated provocations, no sharp rhymes. He entered silently, his eyes focused, his body light. Frazier, for his part, was more determined than ever, as if he felt this was his last chance. The first rounds were brutal. Frazier attacked with a ferocity that seemed to want to erase the past, and Ollie, instead of dancing, absorbed the blows with a strange calm. In the 5th round, a left hook from Frazier hit him squarely, and Ollie staggered. The crowd screamed. But then, instead of backing down, he smiled. Is that all you got, Joe? His voice wasn't a challenge, but a genuine question. Frazier hesitated for a split second. And in that instant, Ollie saw it. It was no longer the man in front of him that he needed to defeat. It was the weight of all the doubts he carried. And then, as if a key had turned, he moved. It was not an easy victory. It was sweaty, painful, almost cinematic in its brutality. In the 14th round, Frazier, with his eyes almost closed due to swelling, was still trying to get up, but his body was not responding. The referee stopped the fight. Ollie won by technical knockout. But when they raised his arm, he didn't celebrate. He just looked at Frazier, lying in the corner, and then at the audience. There was no triumph on his face. There was understanding. The legacy. Years later, when the disease had already stolen his voice and part of his movement, Ollie received an unexpected visitor. Bruce Lee, now a legend in his own right, walked into his home with a book under his arm. I brought you something, said Bruce, placing the volume on the table. It was an old treatise on martial arts, but it didn't talk about techniques. He talked about philosophy. Ollie leafed through the pages with difficulty, his fingers trembling. You always knew I didn't need punches to win, didn't you? Bruce nodded. And you always knew you didn't need words to be heard. Ollie closed the book and pushed it back. I don't need to prove anything anymore. Not to you, not to the world. Bruce smiled. So you finally won. And that afternoon, as the sun set over the Nevada mountains, 2 men who had changed the world without ever having to bow to each other fell silent. There was nothing more to say. Just the recognition that sometimes the greatest victory is not over someone else. It's about yourself. The weight of silence. The wind cut through the mountains like a blade, carrying with it the smell of dry earth and the distant echo of engines. Ollie stood up first, stretching his back with a low groan. The years had left their mark, not just in the scars that snaked up his arms, but in the way his movements now carried a caution that hadn't existed before. Bruce watched him, his eyes squinted against the golden afternoon light. You're leaving, Bruce said, not as a question, but as an observation. Ollie did not respond immediately. He took the book from the table, ran his fingers over the worn leather cover, as if he could extract some final truth from it. Then he put it inside his coat, close to his chest. There's nothing left here for me, he said finally. Not even for you. Bruce laughed, a short, joyless sound. I never wanted there to be. Ollie nodded. I knew that. He knew that Bruce had never needed disciples, followers, heirs. He was a storm that left no trace, just destruction and then a sky too clear to be real. But Ollie also knew that, somewhere, someone would be waiting for him. Someone who didn't know his name, but who carried within him the same hunger that had once consumed him. And what are you going to do? Asked Ollie, turning to face the horizon. Continue here, pretending that the world hasn't changed? Bruce didn't move. His gaze remained fixed on the point where the sun dipped behind the rocks, as if he could postpone the night just by force of will. The world always changes, he said. I just don't need to change with him. Ollie smiled, an almost imperceptible gesture. Liar. And then he left. There was no formal farewell, nor promises of a reunion. Just the creaking of the car door, the roar of the engine, and the sound of the tires crunching on the dirt road. Bruce stood there, motionless, until Ollie's tail lights turned into two red dots in the darkness. Only then did he allow himself to take a deep breath, as if he had been holding the air for years. Inside the house, the phone rang. He didn't answer. The device insisted, once, twice, 3 times, until silence reigned again. Bruce walked to the kitchen, filled a glass with water and drank slowly, feeling the cold liquid go down his throat. When he finished, he placed the glass in the sink carefully, as if the noise might break something fragile. On the wall, an old photo, 2 younger men, standing in a ring, their fists raised not in defiance but in something that looked like respect. Bruce reached out and touched the glass, running his thumb over Ollie's face. Then he turned off the light and let the house plunge into darkness. The last lesson. There he drove for hours, without destination. The road stretched out before him, a black serpent cutting through the desert, and he let it guide him. At some point, he stopped at a gas station, one of those forgotten places where time seemed to stand still. The attendant, a thin man with eyes like someone who had seen too much, didn't recognize him. There he paid cash, bought a bottle of water and a bag of peanuts, and went back to the car. It was only when he turned on the radio that he heard the news. The body was found in a remote area of the Nevada desert. Authorities have not yet released the victim's identity, but sources indicate that he is a man in his 60s, with signs of struggle. Police are asking anyone with information to contact them. There he turned off the radio. He didn't feel surprised. He didn't feel angry. Just an old sadness, as if I had always known that day would come. Bruce had never been the type to die of old age. He was made of edges, of sharp points, and the world, sooner or later, would end up cutting into him. He could have come back. He could have called the police, given his statement, helped find whoever had done it. But Ollie knew Bruce wouldn't have wanted that. And, more than that, he knew he didn't want to. Then he continued driving. The sun rose, and he was still on the road. The desert gave way to hills, then to cities, then to forests. At some point, he crossed a border without realizing it, and the next thing he knew, he was in a country whose language he didn't understand. He stopped at a roadside cafe, ordered a black coffee and a plate of something he didn't recognize, but ate anyway. A woman sat next to him. He had dark eyes and calloused hands, and he spoke to an older man in a language that sounded like music. Ollie watched her for a while, saying nothing. She noticed his gaze and smiled, a simple gesture, without malice. He reciprocated. "Are you lost?" she asked, in halting English. Ollie thought about the question. Getting lost meant having a place to return to. And he was no longer sure if he ever had. "No," he replied. "I'm just going." The woman nodded, as if she understood. Maybe he really understood. The legacy. Years later, in a martial arts academy in a city whose name Ollie had already forgotten, a 15-year-old boy asked the master, "Why do we train so much if, in the end, what matters is what we are inside?" The master, a man with gray hair and scars on his knuckles, stopped the training. He looked at the boy for a long time, as if deciding whether it was worth answering. "Because sometimes," he said, finally, "what we are inside only reveals itself when the body can no longer take it." The boy frowned, confused. The master smiled, a smile that carried something sad and wise at the same time. "One day you will understand." And in that moment, somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, the boy felt like maybe he already understood. Ollie was no longer there to see. He had already left again, as he always did. But somewhere, in a house in the desert or on an endless road, Bruce would be smiling. Because, in the end, the greatest victory was never over the other. It was about himself. And they had won.